I told you not to call him. Do you hear me? The sharp voice pierced the still air, bouncing off the marble walls of the Vance estate like a blade slicing silk. Leo Vance paused mid-step inside the grand foyer, the soft click of his leather shoes swallowed by the echoing shout. The late afternoon sun filtered through tall curtains, casting golden bars across the polished floor. In one hand, he held a handmade Italian teddy bear, the gift he'd brought home for his daughter. But his smile faded. A scream. Hi, fragile, not playful. Not teasing, real. Leo dropped the suitcase without a second thought and ran up the curved staircase, each step louder than the last. He didn't call out. He followed the sound. Then he heard it soft, broken. I just wanted to call Daddy. He reached her door. It was ajar. He pushed it open. Chloe was curled near the edge of her bed, her knees tucked to her chest, her hair a tangled halo of tight coils damp with sweat and tears. Clutched in her small hands was a worn plush rabbit. In front of her stood Helen, the housekeeper who'd been with the Vances for nearly 20 years. Arms crossed, face flushed with fury. You don't belong here. You know that? Helen sneered. This isn't a place for children like you. Black kids don't live in houses like this. Not unless they're cleaning it. Chloe whimpered. Helen stepped closer. You think you're his daughter? He doesn't love you. You're a project, Chloe. A little charity case to make him look noble. Soon enough, he'll get tired of pretending. Leo froze. For half a second, the world spun off its axis. Then he stepped inside. Helen turned startled. Her face went pale. Mr. Vance, I didn't know you were. What are you doing? Leo's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It sliced through the tension like cold steel. She's yelled at me, Helen stammered. I was only trying to discipline. Leo's eyes didn't leave hers. That child is my daughter. Helen's mouth opened, but no sound came. He crossed the room in 2 strides and knelt by. Chloe. Her eyes met his wide red pleading. When he wrapped his arms around her, she clung to him like she was afraid he might disappear. Daddy, I'm here. Baby, I'm here now. He didn't look up at Helen. He didn't need to. His voice was steady. Leave this house right now. But Mr. Vance, I said now. He reached over and pressed the intercom. James, come upstairs to Chloe's room. Escort Helen off the property immediately. No conversation. James responded within seconds. As Helen left, head low, not a word more was spoken. Her footsteps vanished down the hall. Leo stayed where he was. Chloe curled into his chest, her small body shaking. I didn't mean to make her mad, she whispered. She said I didn't belong, that you'd send me back. The words tore at him. He looked around the room. Plush toys, designer furniture, a private bathroom, a shelf of books from around the world. And yet none of it had made her feel safe. He held her tighter. Chloe, he said softly, I chose you. I didn't adopt you to look good in a photo. I adopted you because you are my daughter. No one gets to tell you different. If your heart ached or you felt a connection with Chloe, hit that like button to show you're listening to the voices that need to be heard. And don't forget to comment where you're watching from. You might be surprised to find someone nearby watching this very moment with you. But I'm not like everyone else here, she murmured. He gently lifted her chin. That's right. You're stronger, braver, and more loved than anyone in this house ever imagined. She didn't speak again. She only nodded, barely. Leo sat there long after the sun dipped below the horizon. He listened to her breathing slow, watched her finally close her eyes. Outside the window, the sky faded to deep blue. Inside, a father sat beside his daughter, silent but certain, knowing in his bones that justice would not come from silence. That from this moment on, love would not be distant or delayed. Tonight, he would begin to make things right, not with power, but with presence. Leo didn't sleep that night. He sat in the leather chair beside Chloe's bed, one hand resting gently on her back as she slept. Every few minutes, her breath would catch like she was fighting a memory in her dreams. And each time, Leo would whisper, You're safe, baby. Daddy's right here. At dawn, when the soft amber glow crept through the curtains, he finally stood. His joints ahead, his shirt was wrinkled, and his eyes were bloodshot, but none of it mattered. What mattered was the quiet rise and fall of Chloe's chest. Finally steady, he made his way downstairs, his mind still reeling from the night before. He replayed Helen's words over and over. You don't belong here. Black kids don't live in houses like this. Leo had built this home every inch of it, a testament to his rise from nothing. Born in South Central LA, orphaned at 9, shuffled between relatives until he was 16, then alone. He worked 3 jobs through college, started a tech logistics firm from his garage, and built it into a multi-billion-dollar corporation. He knew struggle, he knew survival, but somehow, despite all he'd overcome, he had failed to protect the one soul who needed him most. In the kitchen, the house was still. He opened the fridge, pulled out eggs and turkey bacon, and began cooking, moving like muscle memory. The smell filled the room. Coffee brewed on the side. He didn't cook often anymore. But today wasn't about habit. It was about presence. Footsteps behind him, light hesitant. "Morning, Daddy?" He turned. Chloe stood in the doorway, still in her pajamas, clutching the teddy bear he'd brought from Italy. "Morning, sunshine." He smiled soft and open. "You hungry?" She nodded, rubbing one eye. He lifted her gently onto one of the stools at the kitchen island and set a plate in front of her. She looked at the food for a long time, before picking up her fork. After a few bites, she asked, "Is she gone?" "Yes," Leo said. "Helen won't be coming back." "Ah." She said, "This house doesn't want people like me." Leo sat down, his coffee, and knelt beside her stool, looking up at her. "Listen to me, Chloe. That house, this home belongs to you as much as it belongs to me. Your skin, your curls, your voice, everything about you belongs here. You are not a guest. You are family." She didn't respond, but her lip trembled. She reached out and hugged his neck tight. Later that morning, Leo sat in his study with his assistant, Marcus. "She's been with us for almost 2 decades, Marcus said, stunned. "You sure about this?" "She emotionally abused my daughter," Leo replied. "I don't care if she worked for me 20 years or 20 hours. She's done. We'll handle the severance." Quietly, Leo nodded. "No press, no drama, but I want full access to the staff records. Every complaint, every schedule. Start with the past 6 months." Marcus scribbled notes. "You think this was a pattern?" "I think I've been blind," Leo murmured. That evening, Leo did something he hadn't done in over a year. He canceled all his meetings for the week. Instead, he picked Chloe up from school himself. The moment she saw him standing by the school gate, her backpack hanging loosely, and her curls bouncing, her whole face lit up. "You came?" "Of course I did," he said, taking her hand. They stopped for ice cream on the way home. Chocolate swirl with rainbow sprinkles for her, plain vanilla for him. He listened as she talked about art class, about how Mrs. Chu let them paint with their fingers that day. He laughed when she imitated her classmate Kevin's funny voice. At one point, she paused and asked, "Do you have to go away again soon?" "Or not for a while," Leo said. She looked relieved. That night, as he tucked her into bed, Chloe looked up at him and asked, "What's going to happen to the other people who work here?" "What do you mean?" "Do they think like her, Helen?" Leo sat on the edge of the bed. "Serious now?" "I don't know, but I'm going to find out. I don't want anyone to be mean again. I promise. I'll make sure this is a kind house. That's my job to protect you." She smiled sleepily, her small fingers curling around his. "Okay. Night." "Daddy." "Night, love." He stayed until she drifted off. Back in his study, Leo poured himself a glass of bourbon, the weight of the day finally settling. On the bookshelf behind him were photos, ribbon cutings, interviews, awards. One picture caught his eye, a snapshot from the day he brought Chloe home. She had been 5 then. Her arms clung to him like ivy, face pressed into his shoulder. He hadn't understood it at the time. He thought she was just nervous. Now he saw it differently. It was the grip of a child afraid the world would vanish beneath her feet. He picked up the photo and stared at it, whispering, "Not again." Then he set it down, picked up his phone, and called his private security chief. "Ben, I want an internal sweep. Discreet. Everyone in the household staff, past and present. I want to know who's here for the right reasons." Ben didn't ask why. He simply replied, "Understood, sir." And Leo leaned back in his chair, eyes on the ceiling as the night swallowed the house once more. But this time, the silence wasn't empty. It was the breath before the reckoning. Leo stood at the window of his home office, hands folded behind his back, watching the sun stretch its fingers across the backyard. Chloe's laughter echoed faintly from the garden below. She was chasing bubbles, their rainbow shimmer drifting skyward in the morning air. He watched her for a long time, the rhythm of her joy both soothing and humbling. Just days ago, that same child had trembled beneath a torrent of hate in her own bedroom. His phone buzzed on the desk behind him. A message from Ben. Security review complete. 3 flagged staff members. Report and footage attached. Leo opened the file, jaw tightening as he read. 3 employees saw long-term had complaints lodged against them. Subtle things. One had repeatedly referred to Chloe as the rescue pup. Another had redirected birthday gifts from vendors meant for Chloe to the general donation pile. The third, more recent, accidentally lost Chloe's school drawings twice. None of these offenses were large enough to draw legal action, but they weren't small in the heart of a child. Leo felt the quiet flame of fury ignite again. Low and steady. There was a rot here. Not loud, not violent, just persistent. Like mildew in the wool shard to notice until the damage was deep. He didn't call a meeting. He didn't make a scene. Instead, he wrote 3 letters, personal, direct, firm, but restrained. Each one informed the recipient that their services were no longer required. Each one included full severance. He handed them to Marcus without ceremony. "Deliver them before noon," he said. "Escort them off the grounds." Quietly, Marcus nodded. "And replacements? I'll review new candidates myself," Leo replied. "We don't just need employees. We need guardians." That afternoon, he picked Chloe up from school again. She climbed into the back seat, clutching a messy paper crown on her head. "I'm Queen Chloe today," she declared with a grin. Leo smiled in the rearview mirror. "Your Majesty, where to?" she giggled. "Home, please." They talked on the way back. Nothing heavy. Leo didn't bring up Helen or the staff. He wanted Chloe's days filled with more than cleanup from adult mistakes. He wanted her to live forward, not backward. After dinner, Chloe asked if she could draw in his office while he worked. He set her up at the low table near the window. She hummed to herself as she colored, tiny feet swinging under her chair. At one point, she looked up and asked, "Daddy, did you have a dad?" Leo paused, pen in hand. "No," he said quietly. "Not one who stayed." Then how do you know how to be one?" He turned to her, smiling. "Because I know what it feels like not to have one." She blinked, then nodded. "That makes sense." And just like that, she returned to her drawing. Later that night, after she went to bed, Leo walked the halls of his home slowly, room by room, noticing things he hadn't in years. A faded photo of him shaking hands with a senator, a dusty award for philanthropic leadership, a trophy case with plaques bearing his name, but no trace of Chloe, no finger painting, no kindergarten diploma, no framed art. How had he missed that? This house was built to impress, but not to hold memory. He picked up a frame and set it aside. The next day, he called a decorator. "I want to redesign the house," he said. "Not the bones. Just the soul, family photos, her artwork, soft colors, things that feel like home." The decorator, confused at first, eventually understood, and she nodded with a gentle smile. "Mr. Vance, it'll feel like she grew up here by the time we're done." The transformation began slowly, one room at a time. Chloe noticed within days. "You hung my painting?" she asked, pointing to the messy watercolor above the fireplace. "It's a masterpiece," Leo said. By the end of the week, there were toys in the living room, a reading nook in the corner, and Chloe's name etched onto a wooden growth chart near the pantry. "This house looks different," Chloe whispered one evening. "It's catching up to you," Leo said. "You've been changing it without even trying." Chloe tilted her head. "Do houses have hearts?" "Only when the right people live in them." She smiled and climbed into his lap. Outside, the sky darkened. The first stars appeared. Inside, for the first time in a long time, Leo felt like he wasn't managing a mansion. He was guarding a home. And he knew deep in his bones that whatever came next, they'd face it together. Because Chloe wasn't just part of his life now. She was the center of it. It was a rainy Wednesday when Leo first noticed something odd tucked beneath Chloe's pillow. He had come upstairs early, carrying a mug of warm chamomile tea and one of her favorite bedtime books. Chloe was brushing her teeth in the adjoining bathroom, humming to herself a soft tune she often made up on the spot. The bathroom light spilled across the carpet in a narrow golden strip. As he smoothed out her comforter and fluffed her pillow, a folded piece of paper slipped to the floor. At first, Leo assumed it was a drawing. Chloe often sketched animals and imagined castles when she was bored. But as he bent down and opened the small, crumpled sheet, his heart clenched. It wasn't a drawing. It was a list written in uneven, childlike scroll with her favorite purple marker. Things I must not do. 1. Talk too loud. 2. Touch the walls. 3. Ask too many questions. 4. Eat the last cookie. 5. Call Daddy when he's away. 6. Cry. Below the list in smaller letters, she had written, "If I break these, she might come back, and Daddy might leave." Leo didn't hear the toothbrush shut off. Didn't hear the small footsteps returning. He was still staring at the paper when Chloe stepped into the room. She froze in the doorway. "You weren't supposed to find that." He looked up slowly. Chloe, where did you learn these rules? Her eyes darted down. She twisted her hands together. She made me say them every day before. School. Helen, her! Venom had run deeper than he'd known. Leo moved to kneel in front of his daughter, gently placing the list on the nightstand. Sweetheart, those rules aren't real. They're not yours to carry. None of them. But I don't want her to come back, she whispered. Or for you to go away. His voice cracked. I will never ever leave you. Not for noise, not for questions, not for any mistake. You're my daughter, Chloe, and you don't have to earn that love. It's yours just because you exist. She was quiet for a long time, then said softly, That's not what she said. Leo's breath hitched. He pulled her close, wrapping her in his arms. She was wrong, he said, kissing the top of her head. She was terribly wrong. Oh, that night. After Chloe had fallen asleep, this time curled in his arms like a baby bird. Leo sat awake, staring at that purple list. His mind burned. The next morning, he called Marcus into his office. I need a therapist, Leo said bluntly. Someone good with children. Someone Chloe can trust. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You want in-house therapy? Yes, someone who can come here twice a week. I don't want her to walk into a cold office and feel like something's wrong with her. I'll put out the call, Leo hesitated, and make sure it's someone who understands what it means to grow up black in a world that doesn't always see your worth. Marcus gave a quiet nod. I know just who to start with. By the end of the week, Dr. Lucille Harper arrived. She was in her 60s, with silver-streaked dreadlocks and a voice that wrapped around you like a warm blanket. A retired child psychologist from the VA. She had spent decades helping children of trauma find their footing. Her first meeting with Chloe was over tea and cookies at the kitchen table. No clipboards, no questions. Just stories about the time she'd fallen out of a tree as a girl. About her dog named Roosevelt, who used to bark at squirrels but never chased them. Chloe laughed. Not loud, not long, but it was real. By their third session, Chloe drew a picture of a lion cub sitting next to a man in a suit. That's me, she said. And Daddy? He's the one with the big hands. When Dr. Harper asked about the lion's face, Chloe said, he looks scared. But he's strong anyway. Later that night, Leo sat in the living room with Dr. Harper after Chloe had gone to bed. She's healing, Lucille said. But she's still carrying fear. Fear she doesn't know how to name yet. Leo looked into his untouched cup of coffee. And me? Lucille smiled gently. You're carrying guilt. That's a different kind of burden. And if you don't name it, she'll think she caused it. That hit him harder than he expected. He walked upstairs and peeked into Chloe's room. She was asleep, breathing, even her lion drawing on the bedside table. He sat beside her for a moment, brushing a curl from her forehead. In that quiet, he made a promise. And not in words, but in presence. He would not only be the man who built her a safer home, he would be the man who stayed. And, little by little, they would both learn how to feel safe again. Together, Leo stood in front of the hallway closet outside Chloe's room, his hand lingering on the brass doorknob. It had been weeks since Helen left. Weeks since Chloe had begun therapy with Dr. Harper. The house was quieter now, but not hollow, just calm. Still, there were parts of it Leo hadn't touched. Corners that held more than dust. And this closet, this space right outside Chloe's sanctuary, felt like one of them. He opened it slowly. Inside were cleaning supplies, old linens, a few storage bins. At first glance, nothing unusual, but something tugged at Leo's instincts. He crouched, pulling out the bottom bin, then the next, until he reached a small cardboard box at the very back, almost hidden behind a set of paint cans. It was Chloe's. He knew it instantly. Not because it had her name on it, but because of the way it had been taped and retaped, the way it was tucked away like a secret. Inside were drawings, crayon-scribbled stories, a plastic bracelet made of green and yellow beads, a folded card that read, "To Daddy from Chloe. I love you even when you're gone." Beneath it, another note, this one in Helen's handwriting. Mr. Vance found this box while cleaning. Probably trash from her room. Thought you should decide what to do with it. Leo's chest tightened. His hands clenched around the note. And until the paper crumpled. Trash, that's what she saw. He took the entire box to his study. One by one, he laid the drawings across his desk. Each one was like a breadcrumb leading back to moments Chloe had tried to share, only to have them dismissed, hidden, or thrown away. And he had never known, never asked. He picked up the beaded bracelet and turned it over in his hand. The elastic had stretched, but the colors were still bright. It looked like something she'd made with hope in her heart. That night, after Chloe had gone to bed, Leo stayed up sketching out a plan. The next morning, he met with Marcus. I want every security feed Revy blind spot. Every disabled camera over the past 6 months. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's a lot of data. Start with the dates Helen was on duty. Leo said, anytime we see a gap or tampering, I want to know. You think she did more than just yell? I don't know what she did, Leo said grimly. But I'm going to find out. 3 days later, Marcus returned with a file. We found something. Leo opened the folder. Inside were screenshots, time-stamped images from hallway cameras. On multiple occasions during Helen's shifts, the feed went black for 20 to 30 minutes. Always around Chloe's room. Always just after school hours. We can't recover what happened during those gaps, Marcus said. But the pattern is clear. She knew where the cameras were. She knew how to avoid them. Leo stared at the images. His hands trembled. This wasn't just emotional abuse. It was strategic, calculated. Helen had isolated Chloe in every way. She made it so no one would see, Leo murmured. He leaned back, his eyes closed, letting the anger rise and then settle. Reacting wouldn't help Chloe. Acting would. He picked up his phone and dialed. Ben, it's Leo. I want a child protection consultant. Not legal, psychological. Someone who specializes in long-term impact. Understood, sir. That evening, he sat with Chloe as she worked on a jigsaw puzzle in the den. Can I ask you something? He said gently. She nodded, eyes still on the puzzle. Did Helen ever tell you not to tell me things? Chloe didn't answer right away. Then she placed a piece down and said, she said if I told I'd ruin your work, that you'd have to fire people and it would be my fault. Leo exhaled slowly. None of that is true. Nothing you could ever say would ruin. Anything. And if someone needs to be fired to keep you safe, I'd do it twice. Chloe looked at him for a long time. Then she said, even if I break a rule, there are no rules about hiding pain. He said, there never should have been. She moved closer and leaned against him. Later that night, Leo typed up a memo to his foundation's board. He wasn't just going to change the household. He was going to change the system. The next morning, he stood before the Vance Foundation staff and announced a new initiative. Safe Voices, nationwide grant supporting school counselors, child advocacy centers, and anonymous reporting systems for children in domestic care. This is not just about my daughter, he said. It's about every child who whispers into a pillow thinking no one will hear. I hear you now, and we will make sure others do too. There was silence in the room, then quiet applause. Leo didn't need standing ovations. He needed action. And now finally, he was ready to lead not just as a CEO or a father, but as a man who had failed to listen and had learned how to start again. Chloe sat cross-legged on the living room rug, her curls bouncing as she carefully threaded beads onto a string. The late morning sun spilled through the tall windows, casting golden light across the hardwood floor. Each bead was a different color, each one carefully chosen. Red for courage, blue for calm, yellow for Sundays, as she called them days when she felt safe and warm. Leo watched her from the armchair, a cup of coffee cooling in his hands. He hadn't told her about the foundation launch yet. Not the speech, not the media buzz, not the way the board had unanimously approved a multi-million-dollar pilot for Safe Voices. It wasn't time. This moment, this simple act of beating, mattered more than headlines. He stood and walked over, crouching beside her. What are you making? A bracelet, she said, not looking up. For Dr. Harper. She likes green. He smiled. That's thoughtful. I like talking to her, Chloe said softly. She doesn't make me feel like I have to explain everything all the time. Leo nodded. She's good at listening. Chloe added a final bead and held the bracelet up to the light. Do you think people can change? Like really change? It was a heavy question for such a small voice. Leo sat beside her on the floor. Yes, I think people can change when they want to. And when they know why they have to. She looked at him. Did you change? He didn't answer right away. I think I'm still changing, he admitted. Every time you trust me with something new, I change a little more. That seemed to satisfy her. She slid the bracelet off the string and into a small velvet pouch. I want to give it to her tomorrow, she said. Leo touched her hand. Can I come with you? Chloe looked surprised. You've never come to therapy with me. I know, he said, but maybe it's time I listen too. The next day, they arrived at Dr. Harper's office together. It wasn't a sterile clinic or a cold building. It was a small craftsman home with a garden out front and wind chimes hanging by the door. Inside, The living room had been transformed into a warm, inviting space bookshelves filled with picture books, soft blankets, and 2 worn armchairs angled toward each other like old friends. Chloe handed Dr. Harper the pouch. "I made you something." Dr. Harper's eyes softened as she opened it. "This is beautiful, Chloe. Thank you." Leo sat down across from them, hands folded. "I was hoping," he said, "that maybe I could join today just to listen." Dr. Harper nodded. "Of course." For a few minutes, they just talked about dreams and coloring and how Chloe's school had announced a spring play. Then Dr. Harper leaned forward. "Chloe, is there anything you wish your dad knew, but you're not sure how to tell him?" Chloe looked at her lap. "I wish," she hesitated. "I wish he knew how many times I almost said something. But I thought I'd ruin everything like if I made him worry. Then he'd leave." Leo felt a punch to his gut. He forced his voice steady. "I don't want you to ever think your feelings are too heavy for me. That's my job to carry them when you need me to." Chloe looked up at him. "I didn't want to be extra. I didn't want to be a problem." "You are never a problem," Leo said. "Not one part of you is too much." She crawled into his lap without a word, pressing her forehead to his chest. After the session, Dr. Harper walked Leo to the porch. "She's made remarkable progress," she said. "But the most important part of her healing is already happening. She believes you mean it when you say she's loved." "I do," Leo said, more than I ever knew I could. That evening back home, Leo opened a drawer in his study and pulled out the old, crumpled list he had found weeks before. The list of rules Chloe had written. Rules of silence, fear, invisibility. He took a lighter from the desk. Outside on the stone patio beneath the stars, he held the paper in his hand and lit the corner. The flame curled through each rule one by one until the paper turned to ash. He scattered the remains into the wind. From the doorway, Chloe watched, arms crossed over her pajamas. "What was that?" she asked. "Just something that doesn't belong to us anymore." "Huh?" She nodded and stepped outside, slipping her small hand into his. The wind was cool, but her fingers were warm. And in that stillness, Leo knew this wasn't just a new beginning for my 8. It was a new beginning for him too. Not as a savior, not as a CEO, as her father. And finally, he was learning how to be one. Leo pulled into the school parking lot 10 minutes before the final bell rang, the rain tapping softly on the windshield like a slow metronome. He hadn't picked Chloe up midweek in months. Not because he didn't want to, but because the foundation and business consumed every spare hour. But things had changed. He had changed. Now he carved out time like it was sacred. Because it was. He stepped out of the car, umbrella in hand, and walked up to the covered sidewalk just as the double doors opened. A rush of laughter and backpacks and the squeak of sneakers filled the air. Children spilled out like confetti, some running into waiting arms, others skipping into buses. And then he saw her. Chloe spotted him instantly and lit up like a sunrise. "Daddy." She ran to him, her curls bouncing, her purple raincoat flapping behind her. He knelt and opened his arms. She crashed into his chest, damp and warm and full of joy. He lifted her easily. "Guess what?" she said as he carried her toward the car. "Mrs. Adams picked me to read the announcements next week." Leo buckled her in and grinned. "That's amazing, sweetie. You going to tell the whole school what's for lunch?" "Pizza and applesauce," she laughed. "But I think I'll also say something cool at the end, like be kind or be quiet." He chuckled. "That's a pretty good motto." She nodded proudly. As they drove home, Chloe hummed to the radio, tapping her fingers on the armrest. Leo couldn't help but glance at her in the mirror, marveling at how much had shifted in just a few months. The shadows under her eyes had faded. Her shoulders no longer curled inward like she was trying to disappear. She was blooming. At dinner that night, Leo brought up an idea that had been sitting quietly in the back of his mind. "Hey, kiddo," he said, swirling spaghetti onto her plate. "How would you feel about inviting some friends over next weekend? A little backyard get-together. Just fun, games, maybe a movie night." Chloe's eyes widened. "At our house?" "Of course. Maybe a couple parents too. We'll have lights in the trees and snacks, and you can show them your tree swing." She hesitated. "Can I invite Amani and Kevin?" "You can invite anyone you want," Leo said. A slow smile spread across her face. "Even Mrs. Chu from art class." "Even Mrs. Chu." The idea took off from there. Chloe grabbed paper and markers and started sketching invitations, each one with a cartoon version of their house and little stars above it. Leo watched from the kitchen doorway, something warm blooming in his chest. This wasn't just a party. It was a declaration. Chloe was ready to let people into her world again. The next few days were a whirlwind. Leo hired a small catering team. Marcus coordinated lighting. James, the head of security, scoped out the entire yard and installed extra gate sensors just in case. Chloe, meanwhile, buzzed with excitement, placing balloons in her favorite spots and selecting a playlist of songs she liked to sing in the car. Leo let her lead. It wasn't about perfection. It was about her ownership, her joy. When Saturday finally arrived, the backyard glowed with soft fairy lights strung from the oaks. A projector was set up against the back wall. Bean bags and picnic blankets were scattered across the lawn. The scent of popcorn, mini hot dogs, and fresh lemonade floated in the warm spring air. Guests trickled in, kids in colorful hoodies, parents holding Tupperware, teachers in denim jackets. The first time Chloe introduced Leo as her dad that evening, he caught the tiny catch in her throat, quickly covered by a smile. But it was there, and he understood why. Naming love out loud still felt like a risk sometimes, but each time she said it, the grip of the past loosened. Midway through the movie, Chloe climbed into Leo's lap on the large outdoor beanbag and leaned back against his chest. "You're not working tonight," she whispered. "Nope, you're not going anywhere tomorrow." Nowhere but pancakes and cartoons. She smiled without looking up. This is the best night ever. Leo kissed the top of her head. Mine too. As the movie played on, and the stars blinked above them, he looked around the yard at the laughter, the life, the light. This wasn't just healing. This was wholeness. And, for the first time in a long time, Leo Vance knew exactly who he was. Not the CEO, not the donor, not the success story. He was Chloe's father, and that was the most important title he would ever hold. The Sunday morning, after the backyard gathering, sunlight poured through the linen curtains of the breakfast nook. Leo stood by the stove, flipping pancakes while Chloe sat cross-legged on the counter, humming a made-up tune. Her hair was still a bit wild from sleep, and she wore his oversized Vance Foundation hoodie, the sleeves covering her hands. "Do pancakes taste better on Sundays?" she asked, sniffing the air dramatically. "Only if you do the syrup dance," Leo replied, sliding a golden brown pancake onto a plate. Chloe giggled. "What's the syrup dance?" He gave her a playful shrug. "You'll have to make one up." She hopped off the counter and performed an impromptu shuffle across the tile floor, ending with jazz hands. That was award-worthy," he said, handing her the plate. They ate together by the window, the sounds of birds outside mixing with the occasional clink of forks on plates. The peace was real, deep, earned. But by early afternoon, the quiet was interrupted by a call from Marcus. "Leo," he said, voice low, "you need to see something." Leo stepped into his office and shut the door. Marcus sent a link, and when Leo clicked it, a video began playing. It was a podcast episode's small mall audience. Amateur production, but the title alone made his stomach drop. The truth behind Leo Vance's adopted image. The screen showed a blurry photo of him and Chloe, walking hand in hand. The host, a sharp-voiced woman with a cynical grin, spoke over the image. "You know what's sad? When billionaires adopt kids just for image points. PR sympathy. A little girl placed in a mansion she doesn't belong in. Raised by a man who's never once spoken publicly about why he really took her in." Leo closed the laptop, his jaw clenched. And not because of the insult to him, but the implication about Chloe. That she was a prop, a decoration, that her belonging could be questioned by someone who'd never met her. He called Marcus back. "Do we know who's behind it?" "Name's Laia Brenner. Online commentator, right-wing shock podcaster. She's looking for controversy to grow her numbers. Is it spreading? Not yet. A few fringe shares, but if it hits the right circles." Leo looked out the window at the backyard. The swing still hung from the oak, swaying gently in the wind. "I'm not responding with lawyers." "Not yet. Then what?" "I'm going to answer it my way." He hung up and walked into the kitchen where Chloe was coloring on a placemat. "Sweetheart," he said gently, "would you want to help me tell our story about us?" She blinked like in a book. "No, more like a short video. Just us talking about what makes our family real." She tilted her head. "Would I get to pick what I wear?" He smiled. "Absolutely." 2 days later, Leo invited a small production team trusted folks who'd filmed Vance Foundation spots before. Nothing fancy, just a camera, a light, and a mic in their living room. Chloe wore her "I'm the Boss" t-shirt, and Leo wore jeans and his oldest flannel. They sat side by side on the couch. Chloe swung her feet. The director asked softly, "What do you love most about each other?" Chloe answered first. "I love that my dad always listens, even when I talk too much, And he smells like coffee and safety. Leo swallowed hard, then smiled. I love that Chloe reminds me who I am. And that she's braver than most people twice her size. The video was simple. No music, no graphics, just truth. They posted it quietly on the Vance Foundation's page. By nightfall, it had 200,000 views. By morning, over 1 million comments poured in from all over the country. This made me cry. Thank you for showing what love looks like. I'm watching from Ohio, and I just want to say this child is blessed, and so is her dad. As a foster mom, this gives me hope. One comment though stood out to Leo. It read, I live just 3 blocks from you. Didn't know your story. Now I do. If Chloe ever wants to play with my daughter, we'd be honored. He showed it to Chloe. She smiled. That afternoon, Chloe and her new friend Camilla drew chalk art in the driveway. Rainbows, hearts, and stick figures holding hands. Leo watched from the porch, coffee in hand. Heart full. Dr. Harper visited that evening. She's glowing, she said, watching Chloe run inside for juice. And you, how are you holding up? Leo sighed. I expected backlash, but the love, it caught me off guard. Dr. Harper nodded. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just stands quietly and lets people see. Leo looked out at the fading light. I didn't adopt Chloe to make a point, he said. But maybe our story can be one. A story of what? She asked. He smiled. Of what it looks like when love shows up and stays. A week later, Leo stood behind the velvet curtain of a small auditorium in Atlanta. It wasn't a press event or a corporate. Gala was a community gathering organized by a local youth center celebrating foster and adoptive families. The Vance Foundation had quietly sponsored the event, but Leo hadn't planned to speak. Until that morning, Chloe had asked him with eyes too wise for her age. Can you tell them what you told me about why you chose me? He'd nodded, though a small part of him still feared the weight of that moment. But now, as he peeked out of the crowd, parents, children, social workers, Mentor felt something different than fear. Have felt called. The host's voice echoed through the speakers. Please welcome Leo Vance. Applause rose gently as he stepped out. No fanfare, no suite, just a man in a rolled-up dress shirt and jeans holding a folded piece of paper he didn't plan to read. Hi, he began, his voice calm but full. I'm not here today as a businessman. I'm here as a father, a grateful one. He paused, scanning the crowd. A few years ago, I made a decision that changed my life. I adopted a little girl not because I wanted to be seen, or to make a statement, or to be anyone's hero. I did it because I met someone who made me realize my life was missing something I didn't even know I needed. A hush fell over the room. I wasn't prepared for how much I'd have to grow. I wasn't ready for how deeply I'd have to examine myself. But Shimayashi made me better. Day by day, mistake by mistake, laugh by laugh, he smiled gently. She taught me that love isn't what you say. It's what you do when no one's watching. It's staying present. It's showing up. It's listening when your heart is too tired to speak. And sometimes it's holding a child's hand, even when you're not sure if you're strong enough to carry their past. The room was silent. Many eyes misted over. I didn't save her, Leo said softly. She saved me. And I know some of you know exactly what that feels like. When he stepped down, people approached with hugs, stories, thanks. A man in his 60s gripped Leo's hand and whispered, I raised 3 foster sons. Never heard anyone say it like that. Thank you. That night, back at home, Chloe waited up. She was curled on the couch, blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Did you tell them? She asked. I did. She nodded like she already knew the answer. Were you nervous? A little. Did you cry? He laughed almost. I knew it. They spent the rest of the evening eating popcorn, on the couch and watching old cartoons. But sometime before midnight, Chloe sat up and said, Can I ask something big? Always. If something ever happened to you, would I have to go somewhere else? Leo turned to her fully, heart thudding. No, he said firmly. If anything ever happened to me, I've already made sure you'd stay with people who love you. People who know you, who understand everything you've been through. You'll never be alone, Chloe. Not ever again. She looked relieved, though a small part of her still carried that old ache. I just don't want to go back, she whispered to that feeling, like I'm invisible. You're the most visible person in my life, he said, and I promise to make sure you always feel seen. Later that week, a letter arrived at the Foundation's office. It was handwritten with no return address, but the penmanship was neat. Mr. Vance, I watched your video. I judged you before. I was wrong. My own son came out of foster care. And sometimes I forget how hard it must have been for him, watching you and your daughter. It reminded me that love is learned, and that we're all still learning. Thank you. Leo read it twice, then tucked it into his briefcase. The story he and Chloe were building was reaching people quietly, deeply, not in headlines or boardrooms, but in kitchens and schools and living rooms like theirs. At Dr. Harper's next session, Chloe brought her a drawing, a big heart with 2 stick figures inside, one tall, one small. "This is me and Daddy," she explained, "and the heart is our house." Dr. Harper smiled. "Looks like a very full heart." "It is," Chloe said, "but there's room for more." "For more what?" "For people," Chloe said. "We could help another kid, right?" Leo, sitting in the corner, raised his eyebrows. She turned to him. "Maybe not right now, but someday we could make our house bigger." He was quiet for a long moment, his chest full. "Yes," he said. "When we're ready, we'll make room." And in that instant, something unspoken passed between them. Not just about adoption, but about growth, healing, and legacy. Chloe had once been the child afraid to speak too loud. Now she was dreaming of giving someone else a voice. And that Leo knew was the most powerful echo of love he'd ever heard. The spring sun shone gently across the Vance property, casting long shadows from the magnolia trees that dotted the lawn. Leo stood near the garden with a spade in his hand, soil on his jeans, and Chloe by his side. Today, they were planting a tree. Not just any tree. A young oak they had chosen together the week before at a local nursery. Chloe knelt beside the small hole they dug, clutching a tag that read, "Quercus alba, white oak. Symbol of strength and endurance." "Is this like the one you used to climb when you were a kid?" she asked. Leo chuckled. "Not quite. Mine was a lot more crooked and had a swing that was probably a lawsuit waiting to happen." She grinned. "This one's going to be perfect." They placed the sapling into the earth together, Chloe steadying it while Leo filled in the soil. When they were done, they stood side by side, dirt on their hands, wind in their faces. "We'll watch it grow," Leo said. "Year by year, just like us." Chloe looked up at him. "Will it still be here when I'm big?" "Long after that. Maybe even when you have kids of your own." She smiled, then fell quiet. "Do you think," she said softly, "that the people who hurt me before, do they ever feel sorry?" Leo's hand stilled. He wiped his palms on a towel before crouching to her level. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Some do, some don't. But what matters most is that you don't carry their shame. That belongs to them, not you." She nodded, blinking away a hint of tears. "I think I used to think I was hard to love." Leo pulled her into a hug. "You are the easiest thing I've ever loved." "Chloe." They stayed there for a while, the breeze moving gently around them. Later that week, Leo received a message from a longtime contact at the Department of Child and Family Services. They were hosting a Roundie summit focused on child trauma, post-adoption support, and community healing. They wanted Leo not just to attend, but to help lead. He wasn't sure at first. It was one thing to speak at community events or release a heartfelt video. It was another to sit in a room of experts and decision makers discussing policy and institutional failures. But then he thought of Chloe's words. "We could help another kid, right?" He said yes. The summit was held in Washington, D.C. in a quiet conference room inside a historical building. Dozens of representatives were there. Caseworkers, therapists, judges, and nonprofit leaders. The room was filled with the kind of silent tension that comes from years of burnout, passion, and bureaucracy. Leo spoke last. He stood with a small photo of Chloe in his hand. It wasn't one of her posed portraits. It was a candid shutter drawing chalk hearts on the driveway. Sunlight in her curls, tongue sticking out in concentration. "I didn't adopt Chloe to change the system," he began. "But after seeing how the system nearly broke her, I knew I had to speak up." He told them about Helen, about the hidden rules Chloe had written for herself, about the therapy, the setbacks, the slow return of joy. "There's no spreadsheet to measure the cost of silence," he said, "but I promise you it's steep. Children don't just survive trauma. They carry it like an echo through every corner of their lives. And unless we meet them where they are with real empathy, they'll grow into adults still trying to unlearn fear." When he finished, the room was silent. Then slowly, hands began to clap. Afterward, a judge approached him. "We need more voices like yours in this space," she said. "Not just data, stories." Leo smiled. "I've got plenty more where that came from." Back home, Chloe had prepared a surprise. When he opened the front door, she stood there holding a tray with 2 mugs of hot cocoa and a handmade sign that read, "Welcome home, hero dad." He laughed and swept her into his arms. "You're the real hero," he said. "Nope," she replied, grinning. "We're a team." That night, as they curled up for their bedtime reading, Chloe asked, "Do you think we'll always live in this house?" "Why?" Leo asked. She shrugged. "Just wondering if we'll move someday. Like, maybe to a place where more kids need us." He looked down at her, his heart brimming. "I think," he said, "that wherever we go, we'll bring home with us because home isn't a place. It's the people in it." Chloe snuggled closer. "I want to bring it to someone else someday." "You will," he whispered. "You already have." And outside the window, under the night sky, the young oak they planted swayed gently in the wind rooted, steady, growing stronger by the day, just like them. It had been nearly a year since Chloe had first stepped into Leo Vance's home with nothing but a backpack and guarded eyes. Now the walls of their house echoed with laughter, shared secrets, and the unmistakable rhythm of belonging. But with growth came new chapters. And this particular morning began with a letter Chloe found at first. She had been checking the mailbox every day for the past week, convinced her pen pal from New Mexico would write back. Instead, tucked among the envelopes was a cream-colored letterhead, stamped with a government seal. She handed it to Leo at the breakfast table, her expression curious. He opened it slowly, skimming the typed words. Then he paused. "It's from the State Child Welfare Board," he said. Chloe's eyes widened. "Are we in trouble?" He laughed gently. "Not even close." The letter wasn't a warning. It was an invitation to testify at a legislative hearing in front of the state Senate. The goal to advocate for more stringent oversight of private caregiving within the foster system. His story, they said, could make a difference. So could Chloe's. Leo looked across the table. "They want both of us to speak." Chloe blinked. "Me?" He nodded. "Only if you want to. You don't have to say anything. You're not ready to share, but I think people would listen to you." "Chloe, really listen." She was quiet for a moment. Then in her small but certain voice, she said, "Okay, the hearing was held 2 weeks later in the ornate chambers of the state capitol." Leo wore a navy blazer. Chloe wore a dress with yellow flowers and small sneakers. She insisted on bringing her lion plushie in her backpack for backup. They sat together at the long table in front of the microphone. The room was filled with lawmakers, reporters, and advocates. Cameras blinked silently from the back. Leo spoke first, his voice calm and deliberate. He shared the timeline, how Chloe had come into his life, how the system had failed her by allowing abuse to go unnoticed, and how love, consistency, and professional support had helped her begin to heal. He then placed a hand gently on Chloe's shoulder. She leaned into the mic. "My name is Chloe," she said. "I used to think I had to be quiet to be safe. But now I know that I'm allowed to speak, and that when people listen, things can change." Her voice trembled slightly, but she kept going. "I don't remember all the bad things, but I remember how it made me feel like I was small and didn't matter. But then, I got a dad who told me that I do, and a doctor who helped me find my voice. And now I want other kids to know they're not broken." A senator leaned forward. "Thank you, Chloe. That was incredibly brave." After the hearing, people approached them in the hallway. Social workers thanked them. Journalists asked for interviews. But Chloe just wanted ice cream. They stopped at a small parlor on the way home. Chocolate for her, black coffee flavor for him. "Do you think they heard us?" she asked between spoonfuls. Leo looked at her. "I think they'll remember everything you said." Back at home, things returned to their quiet rhythm. School, therapy, late-night stories. But something had shifted. Chloe carried herself a little taller. Leo noticed she started correcting people when they mispronounced her name. When she introduced herself to new classmates, she looked them in the eye. She wasn't just healing. She was owning her space. One evening, Dr. Harper visited for dinner. They sat around the table eating baked chicken and mashed potatoes when Chloe brought up a topic none of them expected. "I think I want to write a book." Dr. Harper smiled. "What kind of book?" "About how I learned to be loud again," Chloe said. "Not like yelling loud, just voice loud. The kind that makes people look at you and not through you." Leo set down his fork. "That's a book I'd buy." Chloe grinned. "You have to. You're going to be in it." They all laughed, but the idea stayed. In the weeks that followed, Leo helped her outline chapter S1, a snapshot of her journey, the quiet rules, the bracelet with the beads, the lion inside, the tree we planted. They wrote on weekends. Sometimes she dictated while he typed. Other times, she curled up with a notebook and filled it with thoughts. In early summer, Leo contacted a friend in publishing. "We don't want a bestseller," he said. "Just something honest, something that reaches the right eyes." By mid-August, a small-run children's book titled, Chloe's voice was printed and distributed through foster care, networks and libraries. The illustrations were soft and colorful. Chloe's words, simple but powerful, closed the final page. Even small voices make echoes, and sometimes those echoes build bridges. The first time she saw her book in print, Chloe held it to her chest and whispered, "I'm real now." Leo wrapped an arm around her. "You've always been real." "Chloe, now the world gets to see it too." And they did. Not because of media campaigns or fame, but because of one girl's courage and the man who chose to walk beside her. Together, they turned pain into purpose. And their story was far from over. Autumn arrived quietly, dressing the trees in hues of amber and gold. The air turned crisp, and the evenings came sooner, casting longer shadows across the Vance home. Yet inside, the house was warmer than ever. Chloe had started 5th grade. And every day, she came home with a new story about a science experiment gone wrong, a friend who loved the same graphic novel, or a substitute teacher with a thick Boston accent. Leo listened to each tale with the attention of someone who knew these small moments were in truth the biggest ones. One evening, as they finished up dinner and cleared the plates together, Chloe looked up at him with a familiar spark in her eyes. "Can we do Thanksgiving different this year?" she asked. "How do you mean?" Leo replied, rinsing the last plate. "I want to invite people who don't have anywhere to go," she said. "Like kids who are still waiting, or families who just started like us." He paused, heart swelling. "That's a beautiful idea. I want them to feel what I felt last year." Chloe continued. "That feeling like maybe everything is going to be okay." Leo knelt and hugged her. "Then we'll make it happen." Word spread quickly through the local network of foster care organizations and community shelters. Leo didn't want it to be a corporate-sponsored event. No banners, no logos, just long tables under tents, heaters to keep everyone warm, and enough food to remind people they mattered. On Thanksgiving Day, they opened their home, and not just the backyard, but the heart of it. Volunteers arrived early, helping prep turkeys and sides. Chloe stood at the door with a clipboard, welcoming each guest with a grin and a sticker that read, "Your family today." By mid-afternoon, the yard was filled with laughter, the clinking of utensils and the gentle hum of shared stories. Children played tag near the oak tree she and Leo had planted months ago. Some adults sat quietly, tears in their eyes as they took in the sentiment of them hadn't felt this kind of welcome in years. Leo moved through the crowd, shaking hands, offering seconds, but always keeping Chloe in his line of sight. She floated from table to table like a hostess twice her age, making sure everyone had what they needed. At one point, an older woman in a red scarf approached him. "You don't know me," she said softly. "My grandson is in foster care. I've been trying to get custody, but it's complicated." "I almost didn't come today." Leo listened. "But your girl, Chloe," she reminded me of him. Same eyes, same weight they carry. "I just wanted to say thank you for reminding me there's still good people trying." Leo placed a hand over his heart. "Thank you for telling me that." As the sun began to set, Chloe climbed up onto the makeshift wooden stage they had set for music and announcements. She tapped the mic nervously, her lion plushie tucked under one arm. "Hi," she said. "I'm Chloe." The crowd quieted. "I used to think Thanksgiving was just about food and pie and being polite." A few chuckles rippled through the audience, but this year it feels different. It feels like this is what it's supposed to be, a big family. Even if we don't all live together, even if we don't all know each other yet. She paused, swallowing. "I wanted to say that if you're here, it means someone sees you. Someone wants you here, and I'm glad you came." Applause broke out gentle at first, then stronger. Chloe stepped down, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. Leo met her with a hug. "You just changed somebody's day." "I hope so," she whispered. Later that evening, after the last table was cleared and the final guests had gone, Leo and Chloe stood under the oak tree, wrapped in blankets. The leaves rustled softly above them. "Can we do this every year?" she asked. "We can do it as long as you want," he replied. "I want to remember," she said. "Not just what happened to me, but what came after." "You will," he said. "Because you're not just surviving anymore. Chloe, you're leading." She leaned her head on his arm. "You think the tree will be really big next year?" "Bigger than both of us, I bet." They stood quietly for a while, watching the stars appear one by one. Inside, on the kitchen counter, sat a framed copy of Chloe's voice. Her book now being used in classrooms across 3 states. Next to it was a note she had written on a sticky pad. "We used to be 2. Now we're more." Leo smiled every time he saw it, because in the end, that was the truth of their journey. A girl who found her voice. A man who found his purpose and a love that rippled outward. Making room for others to believe that healing is possible and that sometimes the family you build is the one that saves you. No matter how wealthy or powerful you are, nothing is more important than listening to and protecting the ones you love. A child's sense of safety and self-worth can't be secured with luxury. It takes presence, love, and timely action from a parent. Never stay silent in the face of injustice, especially when it happens within your own. As the sun began to set, Chloe climbed up onto the makeshift wooden stage they had set for music and announcements. She tapped the mic nervously, her lion plushie tucked under one arm. "Hi," she said. "I'm Chloe." The crowd quieted. "I used to think Thanksgiving was just about food and pie and being polite." A few chuckles rippled through the audience, but this year it feels different. It feels like this is what it's supposed to be. A big family. Even if we don't all live together. Even if we don't all know each other yet. She paused, swallowing. "I wanted to say that if you're here, it means someone sees you. Someone wants you here, and I'm glad you came." Applause broke out gentle at first, then stronger. Chloe stepped down, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. Leo met her with a hug. "You just changed somebody's day." "I hope so," she whispered. Later that evening, after the last table was cleared and the final guests had gone, Leo and Chloe stood under the oak tree, wrapped in blankets. The leaves rustled softly above them. "Can we do this every year?" she asked. "We can do it as long as you want," he replied. "I want to remember," she said. "Not just what happened to me, but what came after." "You will," he said. "Because you're not just surviving anymore. Chloe, you're leading." She leaned her head on his arm. "You think the tree will be really big next year?" "Bigger than both of us, I bet." They stood quietly for a while, watching the stars appear one by one. Inside, on the kitchen counter, sat a framed copy of Chloe's voice. Her book now being used in classrooms across 3 states. Next to it was a note she had written on a sticky pad. "We used to be 2. Now we're more." Leo smiled every time he saw it, because in the end, that was the truth of their journey. A girl who found her voice. A man who found his purpose and a love that rippled outward. Making room for others to believe that healing is possible and that sometimes the family you build is the one that saves you. No matter how wealthy or powerful you are, nothing is more important than listening to and protecting the ones you love. A child's sense of safety and self-worth can't be secured with luxury. It takes presence, love, and timely action from a parent. Never stay silent in the face of injustice, especially when it happens within your own.